us this evening. He's a loan officer, won many awards. I think we've known each other since 2005, if I remember rightly, Darren. A long time now, and he's done many. Maybe he'll tell us how many. I don't know whether you know that figure, but for years, Darren would turn up at our broker's office and train us. It was always superb training. It was always very short. Darren's got very short presentation because we want to leave it open for your questions, and we can get really into the idea of this evening. Its goal is to get into the mind of a loan officer. I think if we understand how a loan officer thinks, how an underwriter thinks, it's going to help us in our business, in our real estate investing. So I'm very appreciative, Darren, that you should come and join us this evening and share your time with us. It's over to you. Tell us a little bit about yourself first. Yeah, I know you're a family man, and tell us a little bit about even how you got into being a loan officer, and then you can do your slides and field some questions. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, Graham. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Darren Popper. I'm a loan officer here in East Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, and I'm with a company called Mortgage Investors Group. We are the largest privately held lender in the state of Tennessee, and we've been in business for 34 years. I've been at the very same office, very same desk, very same room for 18 years, which is basically unheard of in my business. But I found a place that I liked, and I didn't find any reason to move. Plus, around here, we're just a household name. We're very well known. And like Graham was saying, we have known each other a long time, and I'm just an open book when it comes to mortgages. So please ask questions. I do think there's some interesting things in here for you guys. The majority of what I do is just first-time home buyer, standard owner-occupied stuff. But after COVID, and really since then, there's just been a lot more investor participation. So I can definitely help people get into the understanding of what, how this business works, because it's like an encrypted language. You got to know it to do it. But Graham, I think you were going to drive this presentation. At least I'm hoping you can.
You're muted, Graham.
Yes. Can you give Darren maybe co-host, and then he'll be able to?
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a Teams guy. I haven't used Zoom in a long time, so.
No worries. You should have like the share button at the bottom if you're presenting something, like a green button.
The share screen, yeah.
Is that for me or for you, Graham?
Yeah,
I made
do that.
both
Yeah.
co-hosts.
All right. Okay. Let me bring it up. I can bring it up. Yeah. So, yeah. Let's see.
But while he's doing that, I can kind of tell you a little bit. Oh, here we go. Nice. We'll do the presentation, and then we'll just do a quick sort of just mindset of a loan officer and of an underwriter, and then we'll do some Q&A if that works for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's me. Pretty purple shirt. I'm due for a marketing update, as Graham pointed out. I have far less hair now, but you can you can use the QR code. It takes you directly to my online website. If anybody has any clients or any needs or anything, please remember me. I am just referral based. Let's kind of go down into a little bit here. Graham, if you'll scroll down just a bit for me. So that DSCR slide, let's just go there. What do you guys know about this program? Have you heard about it? What do you guys know about it?
Let's presume nobody knows anything. Huh?
Yeah, I would say go ahead and just present what is the SCR and what's the difference between the SCR and just break it down.
So the DSCR is probably one of the most exciting things that's come around for investors. It essentially takes income out of the equation. And what it looks at is specifically the cash flow of the property itself. So let's just look at it like this way. Like you're a first-time investor, you've got 20% down, and you want to buy an investment property. Typically you own a primary residence before that would happen, and that is a requirement to have a primary. But if you have your primary, you can qualify for the loan only off of the rent schedule that the appraiser does. So if the appraiser comes out there and says the house is going to rent for $1,800 and the payment after your taxes, insurance, and everything's calculated is $1,799, you qualify. Basically, the only thing you need for this program is 20% down, and a history of home ownership. That's the gist of this program. It really bases the whole entire thing off of what the projected rent is going to be from the property, which is derived directly from the rent schedule or the appraiser. I've done, I don't know, 10 or 12 of these. They're all really the same. I'm always kind of nervous when I get started because it's like, it just feels so foreign. All I've done my whole career is verify, get the income figures, calculate it out. But now, I mean, you have to have I believe it's a 680 or better credit score. There are some overlays, but generally speaking, if you got the 20% down and the property will cash flow for more than the payment, you're good to go. We don't include income, except for if you have other rental properties, there is some income included for the other rental properties. But basically, we are just looking at the cash flow of the house. I use a company out of Charlotte. It's probably one of the more well-known DSCR programs or companies. It's through Deep Haven. It's a program. It's one of the few programs that my company actually brokers. We don't fund these ourselves. They're not underwritten in-house. It's a different world. But any lender is going to broker this product. Only you have to almost like work for Deep Haven to originate one of their products. But basically, everything we do through this company is we're kind of third party. We're a little hands off. But scroll on down to that next one there. Okay, so 660 credit score. I mean, I've done this a long time, but I don't pretend to know it all. Another exciting thing is you can go way up in purchase price. So, I mean, all the way up to a $2 million 4-unit, and that's pretty amazing. If you've got, whatever, 20% of 2 million, what is that? $400,000 hanging around. But essentially you just need the cash and it's got a cash flow, and it's really that simple. It's also good for if a conventional loan, a standard Freddie Fannie program. has a maximum loan amount limit, and I think that's $754,000. So we might consider using something like this in a lot of those higher end properties where you're exceeding 754,000 as a loan amount. But really, the DSCR is probably one of the more, new tangible products that a lot of my investors use. Now, you might also, maybe your CPA likes to get really skinny on how some of these properties cash flow. I can't tell you how many investors I see that they really skinny down that bottom line as far as how much the property is making. So a lot of people will just not show a ton of cash on their tax returns as far as the investment properties are concerned, the Schedule E, and they'll need a program like this too, just because they just won't cash flow. That would be maybe another reason to go into a DSCR. The interest rates on this program aren't terrible, but if I was going to do an investment conventional, we're probably looking in the high sevens today. Something like a DSCR would probably start in the low nines. You're also not going to have a bunch of front end loaded up points for closing costs. The DSCRs actually are a little cheaper to close, which I know is important to you guys. And what's also important to a lot of my investors is they're not afraid of that higher interest rate, because that's more tax write-off for everybody involved. But yeah, I mean, that's the big thing with DSCRs is that if the property makes the money and covers the payment and you got the 20% down, you're in. So yeah, scrolling down, we'll go to that conventional. Most loans that I do investment are done through conventional. Conventional is just another term for Fannie Freddie. We can do them with 20% down, but if you're one of my key investors, I've got, I don't know, 5 or 10 that are buying and holding or switching around at any given time, but I always recommend 25% down. Conventional loans really penalize you at that 80% mark. If with 20% down, your interest rate stinks. The extra 5% down on a conventional loan will help your property cash flow so much better, and you will save a lot on front end points. So a lot of people think 20% down conventional, and that is that's what you got to do. But I recommend to pretty much everybody that can do it, 25% down just produces a much better portfolio, a lot better cash flow. It might take you a little bit more to get to that, extra savings or whatever, the full 25% down. But I really, really stress the 25% down on the investment properties just for that reason. We'll do them with 20. You're normally going to have 2 points usually on your origination. If you do the 5%, the extra 5% down will usually save you a full percentage point on the cost of the loan. So probably $2,000 to $3,000 just on the cost of the loan, and then you got really good cash flow after that. But most of my investors, when I say, hey, look, the extra 5% down saves you right up front, $2,500 on just the interest rate. If they can do it, it's almost always what they choose to do. We do traditional underwriting, and that's probably what you're if you've done any kind of conventional mortgage or mortgage in general, or even FHA or VA or USDA, you've been through a traditional underwrite. That's a wormhole we can go way down, but generally speaking, all loans are approved through Fannie Freddie Desktop Underwriter, DU. DU approves pretty much everybody's mortgages across the country. If you're doing a loan, you're probably running through Desktop Underwriter. But what our underwriters do is basically line by line go through and verify that everything that is listed on Fannie's DU approval, which, Graham, I've probably showed you a few DU approvals in the past. They're 3 or 4 pages long, and they've got a nice list of things that you got to make sure is done. But the job of the underwriter, they obviously have to know a little bit more ins and outs of just what the computer says, but the job of the underwriter's probably gotten a little easier over the last few years with how much information Fannie and Freddie actually give on that DU approval. But it's an interesting world to see this kind of from inside out, because so much of it has become more and more automated lately. But the traditional underwrite is basically what you're going to see across the board from the majority of lenders. They're all going to do traditional underwriting. One other thing that I like to bring up under the conventional is that third bullet. It's delayed financing. Most people don't even know about delayed financing, but you can do this on investment properties. You can do it on personal properties. And occasionally I'll have an investor that'll sell a house and, have enough cash to buy the next house just outright. And this was really important through COVID, because I can think of at least 20 times that we had 15 offers on a house. Investors were having a hard time. Sometimes they were, they just couldn't get a house. But if you remove the financing contingency and you pay cash for the house up front, clearly that makes you more competitive when you're bidding and offering. And people are just like, I just outlaid my, my whole, this is my portfolio money. This is my play money. This is my investing money. Well, it's okay, because with the delayed financing, you can come in the next day after you bought the house and literally start a refinance to recoup your cash. You don't have, there's no seasoning requirements. The only real rule there is you can only get back what you put in plus your closing costs. So delayed financing is great if you want to try to lift a financing contingency, pay cash for a house, and then come back in afterwards and let us do the financing and essentially pay yourself back at that point. We actually have done a lot of those over the last few years too, because so many people didn't want to mess with the bidding and having to be pre-qualified with a mortgage. So they would just pay cash, come back in and recoup. So very, very usable program. And I have a lot of investors that will use that when they can. You can go down a little bit further. We'll look at flipping real quick. Not a ton to say on flipping. I think the biggest thing here is if you guys are buying a house and you've got a quick flip plan for it, you cannot sell that house to anybody through FHA for 90 days. There's a flip rule. Maybe people have heard of the FHA flip rule, but if you're buying a $200,000 house and you're putting a little money into it, that $200,000 house is probably going to be pretty attractive to somebody in that price point, probably an FHA buyer. So I've had many investors kind of go all in on a house, plan for the quick flip, and then sell it to somebody they've accepted an FHA loan or whatever, but you got to wait 90 days before you can actually sell the flipped property to somebody on an FHA loan. Just keep that in mind. If you're flipping a house, typically you're not going to have it flip within 3 months anyway, but some people are really quick at doing these, and you're essentially locked out from a lot of your purchasers if they're going to be an FHA buyer. But that's probably the biggest rule for investors as far as flipping is you can't sell that house to somebody that's going to be using FHA financing for 90 days.
Hey, Darren,
So,
quick question
ahead,
on that.
Sean. Yeah.
Yep.
So what if, let's say I purchase a property, I fix it up. It only took a month to get it all fixed up and then listed. And then on day 30, I get an offer. Can I just schedule for 31 more days out? That puts us at day 91. Like
Absolutely.
I can offer, I just have to, as long as they're cool with closing on day 91, then it's still a deal, right?
Yep. We had to do that lots of times.
Awesome.
And I'm also guessing, Darren, you could lease it for 3 months if you need
Yep.
it, could you? They could lease options, so they could exercise their option and close. Yeah.
You could definitely do that. I mean, when Graham reached out to me, I was kind of like, man, what am I going to talk about? Because, conventional lending has really just been the bread and butter for investors. That DSCR program, it's not going anywhere. It's going to be around, and I really think that a lot of people are going to, at least get into investing through a program like that. It's the biggest deal for investors probably in the last 10 or 12 years.
When did
I
it
think
come
the
out?
biggest thing is, I'm sorry, sure, go ahead.
When did that come out? It sounds like it's, it hasn't been around forever. The SCR.
Probably 2 years ago.
Oh, this was brand new. Oh, okay.
It's,
Well,
it's really new.
I didn't know that.
Uh,
What are the rates compared to like conventional versus the SCR? Are they similar?
Similar. The DSCR is going to be in, I would say, the high 8s to low 9s, and you can actually take a prepayment penalty on some of these DSCR programs if you really have no intention to flip. And if you'll take a 3-year or a 5-year prepayment penalty, you can get a little better deal on the interest rate. But we'll just say 9 versus high 7s. But the DSCRs are a lot less expensive to close. They're just probably $3,000 to $4,000 less expensive to close on that type of loan versus a traditional
Did you say they're
conventional
harder to
loan.
close? The SCR? Oh, they're
Cheaper. Yeah, no, I'm sorry if I said harder. I meant to say
yeah.
cheaper.
No, I probably misheard.
No, I may have said harder because they're not. They're actually pretty easy, but my brain's wired. Anything that's not conventional seems hard to me, I guess. But these aren't so bad.
So
And that
with
would be
with DSCR, I was going to say as well, are they in the individuals' names or in business entity names? Or
Good
can you
question.
do either? Yeah.
You can do either.
That's what I was about to ask. Great. Page, there you go.
We do have to review the LLC paperwork, and I don't recall that whole list, but we need the incorporation papers, all the legalese involved with the LLC, and there is a brief review of the LLC paperwork, but yeah, that's another attractive part of this. You can close in the LLC.
Nice.
Any other questions on? No, I don't do all 50 states. I am licensed in Tennessee, and I can do anything on basically a state that touches Tennessee. But no, I'm not licensed in all 50 states. I probably should be, but I stay plenty busy with just East Tennessee.
Does your network, Darren, like, can people reach out to you and you'll be able to connect them with somebody in different states that you're not licensed in?
Yeah. If I can't help them, I'll find somebody that can.
Okay, awesome.
But generally, yeah, you're just going to be used. Are you guys all where are you? Where's everybody? Are you most of y'all here, or are you everywhere?
Yeah, all over. We're all over America.
Well, the nice thing about lending is these rules apply nationally. I mean, it's not like it's different here. But there are some markets that have higher, like California. Most of California, you're going to have a much higher conventional loan limit. I think it's close to $1 million. So you may not do a DSCR at a really high loan amount in California, but you might too. That's really about all I had set up for investment. I do think that the mentality of this business has changed really since 2008 and 9. But people seem to think that we have some sort of, we don't know it all. Like, we don't have everything that on your credit bureau. Your credit bureau doesn't have every piece of information that we need on it. Like, people seem to think that, I can just do it all from our computer. What's really true about mortgages now is that, like, we got to get, you're very involved. The client is very involved in your loan now. And as I said earlier, so many things are going more or less automated, but lending itself is all based off of risk. Every last bit of it is what's risky, what's not risky, what's performed well, what hasn't performed well, what have we learned from our mistakes in the past, what are we going to do different in the future. I kind of say it's sort of like a barn dance. Like, we're all sort of moving around in unison, all working towards the same goal, but doing very different things. Where I work, underwriters are pretty closely guarded, so we spend a lot of time in guidelines. But really, the last few years, things have kind of tightened up. But the mindset of a loan officer, the mindset of a underwriter, it's based more on risk now than anything. I really try hard to present everything directly to an underwriter that, is going to show strength in the file and really bolster the file and help it. But the truth is, so many people have so many different scenarios. A low credit score with a high debt ratio on a FHA type loan with limited trade lines, that's kind of the underwriter's mindset. give me some compensating factors. Tell me why you think this is work. And if I start running out of reasons, I'm like, look, the time on the job is short, all the reasons I just said, those are the things that start stacking up against a file. More than anything is, we have to find, if you do have some negative things about the file, you have to find some strong things about the file. There is flexibility in lending. Not everybody knows that. The way these guidelines are written, there's lots of interpretation. I mean, I've argued my way through a loan because I felt like the guidelines were interpreted this way, and they were. I mean, you can interpret them different ways. So a lot of this is just about experience and, what have we done in the past. But what do you all want to know about underwriting, or what questions would you have about any of that?
Yeah, just going back to DSCR as well. You can only have the first position. Are you allowed a second position, or will they frown on that?
As far as yeah, I don't think you can have a second lien. At least it couldn't exceed 80% loan to value. You probably could do a first position with a small second, but not to exceed 80% loan to value.
Right. That's what I thought. Yeah, because we have what's called the Morby method and DSCR loans. Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's used much now, but maybe Shad, you can comment on that. But we do all sorts of creative ways of financing, so it's good to hear that you say you're flexible, because we make things happen with JVing or partnership and creative ways of doing things, within the bounds of the law, of course, so but generally a DSCR loan has to be just first position up to 80% of the value of the property.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
I can maybe give a little bit of example, just kind of from the underwriting perspective. And when I take information from people, I mean, I'm always a little surprised. Sometimes people won't know everything. How much do you make a year? Well, it's either 60 or 65. Well, I really need to know that. So sometimes we'll take information and we'll get into the loan, and things don't line up what like people told us. But I've got a loan right now where, I'm asking essentially for part-time income that's self-employed to go along with full-time income. And that's a little unusual. She's got a full-time job, but she's a bookkeeper. Well, she keeps books on the side too. That's easy for her to do in the evening. She has a 2-year history of it, but she didn't file the 1099 income in 22. So on paper, I only have a 1-year history. Well, I've been sort of arguing my way through this loan, and it was really pretty far outside of guidelines, but in our business, there's something called underwriter discretion. And it's really kind of like riding a bike. I mean, once you know how to ride a bike, you get a feel for it. I mean, these underwriters, they look at these scenarios over and over and over, and they know when something's just a little different. But underwriters are able to look at the big picture, and they're able to say, yeah, this may not fit directly in this little box, but I'm still pretty warm and fuzzy about this whole file,
Mm.
So underwriters are able to stand behind their feelings. And a lot of that is kind of, the company you work for kind of tells you how they feel about certain things. I mean, so the culture at Mortgage Investors Group, I feel like, has always been slanted towards doing what's right for the borrower. I think the bigger lenders, some of the big box lenders, it's just not like that.
Different. Yeah, I totally agree. And that's, you push through so many loans. I mean, so at the beginning, I wonder how many loans you've actually done. You've done a lot. And I was always impressed with that. I remember, do you remember that loan we did for Sydney Osborne? That house downtown? Yeah. Well, we're trying to put a construction loan in with another loan. I forget what those were called, but they're typical for investors where you can do a draw, right? We had to get all those.
Yeah, it was a 203K. Yeah, we did a rehab, a repair loan on that one.
Yeah, I mean it's so complicated, but that was you got that through eventually, and that was fairly rare loan, wasn't it? You hadn't done many of those, and they were
That would have been
complicated.
quite a while ago. But yeah, I mean, I don't know the total amount of dollar volume that I've done, but I would say it's probably close to a quarter billion,
Mm,
250 million in mortgages over my career. I would say it's a lot. It's so hard to just
yeah,
convey like what this business. I just have to say it's risk focused, um, with flexibility and kind of rigidly trying to conform to the rules that we have set.
right. So perhaps tell us what some of the red flags are, so we can be on the lookout for those before even presenting a loan. What's some of the red flags an underwriter would say no, not approval?
Well, it's all so 2008 and 9. All we had a bunch of loans go bad, and there was legislation called Dodd-Frank, and Dodd-Frank established a couple laws. One of the laws was the ability to repay. It's ATR in our business. And essentially what ATR says is that we could get sued out the wazoo if we didn't do a really dang good job of showing that this borrower had the ability to pay for the loan. That's what ATR stands for, ability to repay. I I I, th- I think the most important part has become income. Um, I, People are shocked that you're like, okay, I'm buying a $400,000 house and I'm putting $300,000 down on it, but I just don't make much money. Well, I can't do a loan in those scenarios. I mean, if you don't have income, there's no mortgage. Um, so a big giant red flag right now is any kind of inconsistency in income. Um, Declining income has been a nightmare, especially because so many people made so much money over COVID. Realtors and mortgage people, anything salesy, you were killing it during COVID, and a lot of those incomes have declined. So underwriting is really, really picky on a decline in income.
Mm,
Um, we clearly have trouble with people that have had credit issues, bankruptcies, multiple bankruptcies. There's lots of additional rules that apply there. Um, but I think the biggest thing right now is probably a decline in your income is it's
mm.
hard to get over on some of these loans.
Right. So, how does somebody who's say retired and they want to move house, and maybe they just have a pension now, is that counted as income?
Yeah, we will count social security income, pension income, dividend income, annuity income, as long as we have a 3-year continuance. Um, I had a guy that cashed in his 401k and withdrew, 3,000 a month, and he was 59 and he was of age to do that. But as long as I showed he could withdraw that 3,000 for, 3 years, we use all kinds of retirement income. Yeah, Graham, we do.
There you go. All right. Well, let's hear some questions from somebody else. I know Cody, you've always got questions.
Well, there's one
Yeah.
that popped up down here. For when you don't have any W-2s, you would use that DSCR program. If you can hear me, I don't know who popped up there, but that first program would be ideal for somebody that, isn't showing enough income.
Okay, so it can be owner occupied as well as an inverted tenant then. Yeah.
No, the DSCR, you got to have the rent income qualify.
Right. There you go.
Is there any workarounds to that? Like, can your LLC buy it and then you are the renter? Like you sign an actual lease with your LLC?
I don't know. I'd have to check into that.
Okay.
I mean, in theory, I would say that they would still see that you own the LLC and that you're signing it from the LLC. I would think that on its face probably wouldn't work.
I think you have to be like a minority order, right? Like less than 25% or less than a certain percentage or something.
That might work if you're a minority owner. That I could see that potentially working. Yep.
I think I heard that about some other, not specifically DSCR, but it was about something else. Where
That's a good question.
it'd be really, yeah. Well, you guys were talking about it, and that popped into my head. I have guys. Anybody have a question for Darren? Like, this is really valuable information. The more you understand this stuff, this is real estate. I have a couple questions. So, but Cody, did you have a question? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I've got a bunch too, so it's kind of good to probably some of them are similar to yours. Couple questions I had are kind of just industry related, kind of like what you're seeing right now. Like with us, everybody here on this team, a lot of folks here on the team right now, we're kind of branching off into foreclosures and dealing with folks that are going through that and starting to try to figure out, exactly what foreclosures mean to somebody, having that on their credit. And then also kind of the other side of this, and this is the industry question, about like, what do you do with folks that don't qualify? They're just not bankable or whatever it is that you can't help them. Is there anything that you do with those folks? Like anywhere you refer them, to other outside traditional financing means, like we do wraps on houses and stuff like that. So I don't know if that question makes any sense, but kind of what happens to the folks that don't qualify? Do you do anything with them or?
Yeah. It kind of just depends on how, bad is the don't. But I do a ton of coaching and follow up, and most of that is really, I gauge how much of that I do based on the responsiveness of the client. But if you don't qualify for an FHA loan, I mean, I can go down to a 580 credit score on some of those scenarios, and you don't feel coachable. There's not much that I do in those cases. Exchange some numbers, call me back 6 months, a year, and let's see where you're at. But it's the coaching looks a lot basically like, credit score, how to bring that number up, and late payments and what really dramatically affects credit, which is hugely weighted on usage and balances more than almost anything. But I mean, I've got a guy here locally. He's kind of in your all's world. Well, he's not kind of, he's in your world. He's got 12 rental properties, and he's got a little website set up, and people will inquire on his website, and 9 times out of 10, when I get them on the phone, they've already talked to a mortgage person. They've already been denied, but I tell you that to say that he's doing lease to own on a local website, and he's getting an enormous amount of volume and traffic. And I'm calling through these people daily, trying to find out if there's anything I can do to help. Some people are just some people just don't take life that seriously, and there's just nothing you can do to help them. But the ones that are close, we're going to really try our best to coach them up, usually in score, or help them on tax returns, how to file. Depreciation counts as income. So, I mean, I can write back depreciation income, and I always recommend investors house as much as they can in depreciation, or as much as your CPA will let you, because that counts back towards the front end. But I probably do more for some trouble or hard clients than most loan officers. I would say the majority of us don't do a whole lot, sadly.
Got it.
But that was a two-part question. I think I just got the one part. I don't know if I got the other part. Oh, foreclosures. Yeah. Graham was talking to me a little bit about some of the stuff you guys do with foreclosures, and it got a little bit over my head, to be honest with you. I did tell him that maybe I could learn some stuff from you and follow back up in a future meeting, and maybe have more knowledge on some of the ins and outs on the foreclosure stuff.
Do you see anything like on your end with houses? You're a broker, right? So you guys aren't holding the paper, is that right? Or I mean,
we sell the majority of them, but if you're asking if foreclosures are going up, very, very slowly.
yeah,
The majority of the loans that we've made over the last decade are really, really very good loans. As an industry, these
Yeah.
mortgages will perform. You guys are going to see you're going to be dealing with the shortage of supply for a long time. I think the projection is builders would have to build 5 million houses within the next 7 years, but they can only build, I think, 200,000 a year or something like that. So the housing shortage isn't going to be going away. It's still softening up. I think we may see recessionary things, maybe not right away, but it feels like the economy's booming. I don't think it's going to slow down, but if it does, I think some of these people are going to let go of these houses first, because they're not committed to a 7.25% interest rate. So the minute you start seeing a little bit of downturn, I think people are going to let a lot of these go. People love their 2% interest rate. That's why they're not selling. So, when we get a little change in the economy and some of these people lose jobs, or any little change, I think you'll see more houses hit the market. In my area, it's been a lot of estate sales. I feels like everybody died in October, and they just waited until spring to list the home. But of the 12 or 13 loans I'm working on right now, I think 9 or 10 are estate sales, and that's highly, highly unusual. So be out there. You might find good deals on a house if you're like taking flowers and cookies to nursing homes.
Yeah.
A good question.
right on. Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Good stuff, Cody. Anybody else got any other questions? I had a general question, just as like good advice. Darren, what do you recommend somebody looking to get a loan, regardless if it's like conventional or DSCR, or maybe there is a difference between the two? What are best practices? Like what are some things you as a professional that does this, at a high level would tell somebody that's trying to get their first or second or whatever loan?
As an investor?
Yeah, as an investor, and then also I guess as a, just if they're trying to buy like their first home or second home or something.
If you wanted to build an investment portfolio, I personally think the way I would start it would be I would want to buy a house for myself that I felt like would make a good investment property. I'd live in it for a year. I would find somebody to rent that property and put a lease on that property, because a lender can count that lease income on your home. So your very first rental property, you bought it, you lived in it, put somebody in it. That allows that property to cash flow. 5% down on the next property is all that's required. Put 5% down on your first house. Live in it for a year. Throw a renter in there. Once I get that contract, the rental contract, that covers that rent. Rinse, wash, repeat. Next home, same thing. Not a, it's a placeholder home for you. 1 year rental contract, wash, rinse, repeat. By that point, you've started to have rental income reporting to your tax returns. And, as long as you're going to live in the home as a primary for a little bit of time, that's how I see a lot of these guys grow these businesses, or initially. Then you start developing equity, and you've got more options from there. But yeah, that's how the majority of them grew a lot of these businesses. I'm really close to the Great Smoky Mountains, and there are 100,000 cabins up there that freaking print money like crazy. So all the time I got people buying stuff in the Smokies, and that they just do really, really well up there. So
Yeah.
you can do that, or you used to be able to do that with 10% down. You can still do it with 10% down. The interest rate's terrible, but second homes used to be a nice loophole for people to purchase a second home, especially if it's in a near a national park or someplace, traditional second homey. I've helped people kind of grow into portfolios, with second homes, and then just the wash, rinse, and repeat cycle of that living in it for a short period. That's what I usually see. Is it's not an overnight process. It takes a couple of years, but if you get started in your 20s and 30s, some of these guys have got 7, 8 houses now, and they're younger than me.
Yeah, I
mean,
think as well, it's a good idea to buy a fourplex, isn't it? Because you can get a conventional loan and live in one and rent the other 3 out. Just cover your expenses.
Yeah, they allowed that now with just 5% down.
Mm.
I mean, you have to live in one of the units, but yeah.
Yeah.
Lending has a few loopholes. Not everybody knows that you can put a rental contract on your property, and we count that immediately. It doesn't even have to make it to your tax returns. You just have to be a homeowner, turn your primary residence into rental, and as long as you got down payment for the next house, you can just go buy yourself another primary and keep doing that. Plus, you never get hit for that investment interest rate. I mean, primary interest rate right now might be 6.8, investments 7.5. And you're not breaking any
write that
rules.
down. Yeah, write that down, because that's a golden nugget, haven't got any rentals yet. Thank you, Darren. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted. Well, I wanted people to write that down. So. Mhm.
I don't know. I just hope there was something maybe actually a little bit tangible in here. I can talk about mortgages for hours, and then I just stop and think, what the hell did I say? Was it any actual good information? But hopefully there was something here that somebody pulled out.
Yeah. Yeah, I certainly did, Darren. So I'm always learning from you. We had some good conversations, didn't we? And I like the delayed financing option. That's certainly something we should write down and discuss and digest, and how we can use that. So thanks, Darren. we only have you for an hour, so thank you very much for coming. It was very, very invaluable. Is there any other feedback or any last minute questions from
Lee had a
anyone?
question in the comments there about the guidelines for without a W-2. So if you had,
Okay.
Yeah, that would be, I mean, that would be an ideal scenario for, well, so if they're trying to purchase a primary or again on an investment, I don't know, but without a W-2,
let's say investment property, because you said for investors or others, is there a cap on the DSCR loan amount?
it was 2 million was the cap on the DSCR. If you're purchasing an investment property and you don't have W-2 income, it doesn't matter. I mean, if it's, we look at taxable income. So if you've paid taxes on it and you've paid taxes on it for 2 years, we're going to count it. If you're not paying taxes on your income, there's not much that we can do. You're probably going to have to look at, hard money or start, actually filing taxes. But no,
But with-
people think W-2 income is what's needed. It's not. You can have any kind of different income.
That's what the beauty of the DSCR, right? Is they don't even look at your W-2, right? So it doesn't matter. Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. And it's also something to bear in mind in the future is when you are cash flowing each month, don't forget to pay yourself first, right? And then that's important because that'll count and help you. Yeah. Of course, a good CPA will tell you that, right, Darren? Yeah.
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 No, anybody that's doing investment stuff, I would also recommend working with a CPA that's, really familiar with that, because I've seen some just crazy stuff that CPAs do, and it just doesn't make any sense. And it's ruined deals in the past. If they just would have done it right, it would have been fine. It's very difficult to use amended tax returns now to qualify for a loan. Like it almost never happens if you amend your returns to come back, and unless it's a legitimate mistake.
That's another golden nugget. Don't amend those tax returns. Yeah.
Now that I know a little bit more about exactly what you're looking for, Graham, maybe, I'll think on this a little further and we give it another 4 or 6 months or something, and maybe I could do something else that's more specific or
Yeah.
has a little bit more
I'd
info.
love you to come back because I remember all the good discussions we had, right? We're trying to solve. And Darren, just to let you know, Darren's got wonderful heart. He really does want to help. He when he came to our office, it was always pizza, and then you throw a couple of parties each year. He paid for it all, right? I mean, yeah, it's marketing, but he's a brilliant marketer, very consistent, with a genuine heart. So I'd love you to come back.
Yeah. Me
Knowing
too.
who you are. Yeah.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd love to connect with you, Darren. I have a bunch of questions. I know, like Graham already knows you really well, and then some of the other people in here too. I know Cody might have questions and whatnot. So really appreciate.
Where are you at, Shad?
Arizona. I'm out in AZ.
Got your number right there. Let me shoot you a quick text.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, awesome. And thanks for making time and coming out. That was valuable. So to you, it might seem like elementary. You're like, I'm just going over yesterday's news here. But for us that don't deal with this side of it much, it definitely is helpful.
I will say that we don't think we're going to get much rate improvement this year. There's still about 50% chance we're going to get some improvement in July. My neighbor down the road is kind of a big wig with Merrill Lynch, and we talk on the weekends. They've completely taken the July rate improvement off the table. So if you're a Merrill guy, Merrill believes that it's not going to happen in July, and I've almost always trusted what Brian says, and he's honestly almost always right. So I'm sort of hanging my hat on, we might get one more rate improvement towards the end of this year. The market, the current interest rates have about we have two quarter point rate prices priced in. So if in fact that they take this July off the table, which they might or they might not, we could still see rates pop up a little bit. I think the Fed is saying higher for longer now, and I believe that. I think we'll be looking at
You're saying you might see the interest rates tick up for real estate, not the Fed rate ticking up, right?
correct. The Fed rate won't
Steady.
kick, but we're expecting two rates. So if they take one completely off the table, we've got two priced in. So if they take one out, then we probably will have a little bump in rates. If you guys don't watch the 10-year Treasury, that's what drives our market, and we heavily watch mortgage-backed securities. And I like to look at Bloomberg and Market Watch. At any given time, I've got the 10-year Treasury yield pulled up on Bloomberg, and you can pretty well count on what rates are doing based off that Treasury yield. But I think higher for longer is the rhetoric, and I think it's gonna be higher for longer. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much.
thanks, Graham. We appreciate you guys.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really appreciate your time today. That was
Yeah, I sent you a text. I don't know if you got it.
I just got it. Yeah, I'll reply right now.
You're good.
Thanks,
You're welcome.
brother.
Call or text anytime, Chad. Appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we can do
And
some
you're
business.
welcome just to pop in, Darren. We meet Mondays to Thursdays. If you did ever want to just
Yeah.
pop in, more than welcome to.
No, it's good to know. Thanks, Graham.
We're in the Facebook group too. I don't know, Graham, you already invited Darren, I assume.
Yeah, I did share the link. Yeah, join our Facebook group if you like, because
Feel
we
free.
generate lots of business.
Yeah, since you've co-hosted, yeah, feel free to drop your information, and anybody in your neck of the woods or anywhere you're licensed or that you want to do business, you can ask for the business, and you never know.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Thank you. Really appreciate your time. Graham,
you.
thanks for putting this on tonight. This was very valuable.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Good night,
See ya.
everyone. Good night.
Bye.